This is the 13th discussion with Mr. J. Krishnamurti and Dr. Bohm at Brockwood Park on September the 18th, 1980.
May we continue with where we left off the other day. What makes the mind is always following a certain pattern, always seeking. If it let go of one pattern, picks up another pattern, and so on, keeps on functioning all the time within that. Why? One can give explanations. One can see why it does, for protection, for safety, for slackness, indifference, and a certain amount of carelessness, total disregard to one's own flowering, and so on. But I think it is very important to find out why our minds are always operating in a certain direction. Because we came to the point when we said that one comes after one has been through all kinds of travail, investigation, and inside one comes to a blank wall. And that blank wall can only wither away or broken down when there is love and intelligence. That's what we came to the other day. But before we go into that, I would like to ask, why do human beings, however intelligent, however learned, however philosophical and religious, they will always fall into this groove?
Yes, well, I think the groove is inherent in the nature of the accumulated knowledge.
Are you saying then that knowledge invariably must create a groove?
Well, perhaps not must, but it has, in the way it has developed in mankind. Knowledge about the psychological knowledge, that is to say.
We are talking of that, obviously.
Yeah. That psychological knowledge, then I would agree, must create a groove.
But why does the mind not be aware of it, see the danger of it, see its mechanical repetition, and therefore there is nothing new in that, and yet keeps on doing it?
Yes, well, you see, I think when we were discussing this accumulation of knowledge, which really constitutes a groove, because...
yes, constitutes the groove, but why?
I think that it's the same question, see, if you merely think of the accumulation of knowledge making a groove, then you don't see why a person should stay in it, you see.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Now, it seems to me that the groove, or the knowledge accumulated, has a significance far beyond... seems to have a significance far beyond what its real significance is, that it carries a necessity. See, if we say we have knowledge of some object like the microphone, it has some limited significance. Now, knowledge about your nation, the nation to which you belong, seems to have immense significance.
Yes. So, is this significance the cause of this narrowing down of the mind?
Well, it holds the mind to see that this knowledge has a tremendous value beyond all other values. It makes the mind stick to that because it seems the most important thing in the world.
You know, certain philosophies, certain concepts and so on in India, there is this philosophy that knowledge must end. You know, of course, Vedanta. But apparently very, very, very few people do end knowledge and talk from freedom.
Well, I would come back to that point and say that knowledge generally seems extremely important, worth holding on to. You see, though a person may verbally say it should end.
But, and
there's knowledge about the self.
Yes, you mean I am so stupid that I don't see that this knowledge has very little significance, essentially, psychological knowledge, and yet my mind clings to it.
Yes, I wouldn't quite put it that the person is that stupid, but rather to say that this knowledge stupefies the brain, you see.
Yes, all right.
I mean that the brain, being caught in this knowledge, becomes stupefied.
All right, but it doesn't seem to extricate itself.
Well, because it's already so stupefied that it can't see what it's doing, right?
So what shall it do? I've been watching this many years. Why human beings think or attempt to become free from certain things, and yet this is the root of it. You know, this accumulation, psychological accumulation, which becomes psychological knowledge, and so it divides and all kinds of things happen around it and within it. And yet the mind refuses to let go.
Yes.
Is it that doesn't see or it has given to knowledge such immense importance?
That's what I mean, yes.
Why? Is that because there is safety in it?
Well,
there is security in it?
Well, that's part of it, but that it seems to be a source of security. But see, I think in some way knowledge has taken on the significance of the absolute. You see, to say that knowledge should be properly relative. Now, but this knowledge of the mind, the psychological knowledge of the self, or the associated knowledge of religion.
I understand all that, sir, but you're not answering my question.
Right.
I'm an ordinary man. I realize all this, and I realize the significance and the value of knowledge in different levels. But deeper down, inside one, this accumulated knowledge is very, very destructive.
That's true, but there's self-deception, that the knowledge deceives the mind, so a person is not usually aware that it is destructive.
Is that why human beings cling to it?
Well, they can't really. By the time, you see, we don't know exactly how they got started on it, but once it got started, the mind is generally in a state in which it is not able to look at this because it is avoiding the question. There's a tremendous defensive mechanism to escape looking at the whole question.
Why?
Because it seems something supremely precious might be at stake.
You see, no, one is strangely intelligent in other directions, capable and efficient, skill, have greater skill. But here, where the root of all this trouble is this, why don't we comprehend it fully? What prevents the mind? You say it has given importance to knowledge. I acknowledge that. It is so. And yet it holds on. You must know.
Well, but I think that once this has happened, there's a mechanical process that resists intelligence. See that.
So what shall I do? What shall I do as an ordinary man? I realized technological knowledge and all that, but the knowledge which I've accumulated, which is divisive, which is destructive, which is rather petty, and yet I hold on to that. And I realize I must let it go, but I can't. What shall I do? I think this is the average person's problem. A problem which arises when we're a little bit serious about all this. Is it the lack of energy?
Not primarily. See, the energy is being dissipated by
Dissipated,
this process.
I understand that. Having dissipated a great deal of energy, I haven't got the energy to
But that could come back quickly.
grapple with this.
No, that could come back quickly if we could get out of this. You see, the energy is constantly being dissipated, and a person may be a little worn down, but he could recover if this would stop. I don't think it's the main point.
No, that's not the main point.
Yeah.
So what shall I do as a human being, realizing that I have this knowledge is naturally, inevitably forming a groove in which I live. My next question is, how am I to break it down?
Well, I'm not sure that it's clear, say, that in general, that for people that this knowledge is doing all this, and also that the knowledge is knowledge. You see, it may seem to be some being, the self, the me. There's a certain, this knowledge is experienced as some entity, that this knowledge creates the me.
Yes.
And the me is now experienced as an entity, which is not knowledge, but some real being, right?
Are you saying this being is different from knowledge?
It appears to be. It makes itself, it feigns difference, you see.
But is it?
It isn't, but it has a very powerful ability to...
But that has been my condition.
That's true. Now the question is, how do we get through that to break down
That is the real point, you see.
Because it creates an imitation or a pretension of a state of being. Right?
If you look, I mean, there are 700 million Catholics, thousands of millions and millions of Chinese, all follow. This is their central movement. And it seems so utterly hopeless. And realize that the hopelessness, I sit back and say I can't do anything. But if I apply my mind to it, then the question arises, is it possible to function without psychological knowledge in this world? I'm rather concerned about it because I think wherever one goes, whether it's California or here or anywhere else, it is this central issue that is must be resolved.
That's right. Now, but you see, if somebody, you may discuss this or tell this to somebody, and he may say it looks reasonable, perhaps. But you see, when let's say that his status is threatened, which we have to say that's psychological knowledge. You see, it doesn't seem to him that it's knowledge that's threatened,
I know
but
all that.
Something more, right? Now, he does not see that his knowledge of his status is behind the trouble. Now, knowledge seems to be, at first sight, something passive, you see, something which you know, which you could use if you wanted to, and which you could fail to use if you don't want to, just put it aside, you see, which is the way it should be.
I understand all that.
But then when the moment comes,
back again.
Yeah, the knowledge no longer appears to be knowledge. Right? You see, how would you, if you were to talk to some politician or
Oh.
Well, for example, I think somebody once wanted you to talk to Mao Zedong. You know.
Oh, no.
You would probably get nowhere, right?
Nowhere. At least the politicians and the people in power wouldn't even listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
The religious people won't listen to you, so-called religious people. Mm-hmm. This is only the people who are discontented, who are frustrated, who feel they have lost everything. Perhaps to those will listen, but they won't listen so that it is a real burning thing. How does one go about it to make one, say for instance, I've left Catholicism, Protestant, all this nonsense. I'm also, though I have a career, I know it's necessary to have knowledge there, but I've come to a point as a human being living in this world that I see how important it is not to be caught in the process of knowledge, psychological knowledge, and yet I can't let it go. It's always dodging me. I'm playing tricks with it. It's like a hide and seek. Mm-hmm. All right. From there, we said that is the wall I have to break down. We are approaching it differently. That's the wall I have to break down. Not I. That's the wall that has to be broken down. And we said that wall can be broken down through love and intelligence. Aren't we asking something enormously difficult?
Well, it is difficult. It's.
I mean, I'm behind this side of the wall, and you're asking me to have that love and intelligence which will destroy the wall. But I don't know what that love is, what that intelligence is, because I'm caught in this side of the wall. And I realize, logically, sanely, as you pointed out just now as an ordinary human being, I realize what you're saying is accurate, true, logical, and I see the importance of it. But the wall is so strong and dominant and powerful that I can't get beyond it. And you said, and we said just the other day, that wall can be broken down through insight. We went into that. That insight becomes an idea.
Yes.
It's not an actuality. See, yes, I understand it. I see it. But when I hear that, when you describe the insight, whether it's possible, how it brought about and so on, I immediately make an abstraction of it, which means I move away from the fact, and the abstraction becomes all important, which means knowledge. You follow what I mean?
It's the activity of knowledge.
Knowledge. So I'm back again.
Well, I think the general difficulty is this, that knowledge is not just sitting there as a form of information, but it is extremely active, meeting every moment and shaping every moment according to the past knowledge. So even when we raise this issue, knowledge is all the time waiting and then acting.
Acting, yes.
But you see, one point is to know that our whole tradition is that knowledge is not active, but it is
very active.
It is really active, but
people
generally don't think of it that way. They think it's just sitting there.
It's waiting.
It's waiting to act, you see. And in anything you try to do about it, knowledge is already acting. By the time you realize that this is the problem, it has already acted.
Yes. Do I realize it as a problem or an idea which I must carry out? You see the difference?
Yes, well, the first point is that knowledge automatically turns everything into an idea which you must carry out. That's the whole way it's built, right?
That's the whole way I've lived.
Well, knowledge can't do anything else. You see, that...
How am I to break that even for a...
Well, it seems to me that if we could see if you could observe or be aware, if knowledge could be aware of itself at work, like saying, see, the point is knowledge seems to work unawares. You see that it's just simply waiting there and then acts. And by that time it has disrupted the order of the brain.
I'm very concerned about this. Because wherever I go, this is what is happening. And it's become a problem, not for me, but it's something that has to be resolved. Would you say the capacity to listen is far more important than any of this, any explanations, any logic? To listen.
It comes to the same problem.
No, I'm trying to see. It doesn't. I want to see if there is a possibility that when I listen to what you are saying so completely, the wall has broken down. You understand? Is there such a... I'm trying to find out, sir. I'm an ordinary man, and you are telling me all this. And I realize what you are saying is so. And I'm concerned about it. I'm really deeply involved in what you are saying. And somehow the flame isn't lit. All the fuel is there, but the fire isn't there. So what, as an ordinary man, what shall I do? This is my everlasting cry.
Well, if it's the capacity to listen, then we have the question of, say, the ordinary man is full of opinions, you see.
Of course. If you're listening with opinions,
Yes,
you
yes,
might be just as well dead. That's
well,
nonsense.
Not listening. You see, I think knowledge has all sorts of defenses. So if you're thinking of trying to spread, and make it possible for people, say, the ordinary man, to have this perception, right? That's really what you're asking, isn't it?
Yes.
At least those who are interested. Right?
Yes.
And now, I think knowledge has a tremendous number of defenses. It is against perceiving this. It has evolved in such a way that it resists, is built so as to resist seeing this. So it has opinions, which also act immediately.
I understand that, sir. But I want to find not a drug, not a medicine, not a way, but there must be a communication between you and me, who is the ordinary man, a communication so that the communication is so strong that my act of listening to you and you communicating with me operates.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes. So then, how do you have to break into through this opinion, through the whole structure?
Of course. That's why I've come here. an ordinary man, I've come for that. I've left all the churches and all that stuff. I've thrown miles away, years away, I've finished with all that. I've just come here, and I realize all that has been said here is true, and I'm burning to find out.
Well,
when you communicate with me, your communication is so strong, so real. You follow me? You're not speaking from knowledge. You're not speaking from opinion and all the rest of it. You are really free human being who is trying to communicate with me.
right.
And can I listen with that intensity, which you, the communicant, giving it to me?
Well, we'd have to ask, if we're, is the ordinary man full of that?
No, he's not. He's pulp. He wants the pulp. No, I said I'm an ordinary man, but I've moved away from all that.
Yes.
I've come here.
Mm-hmm.
I've left all that. I also realize in opinions I can grow, multiply, gather opinions, which is partly prejudice and all the rest of it. I realize all that. And I want to listen to somebody who is telling the truth, and in the very telling of it, something is taking place in me. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you understand. And because I am so ardently listening, it happens. I wonder if I'm conveying anything. After all, as you're a great scientist, I'm one of your students. You want to tell me something. You're telling me about something which I know must be enormously important because you have given your life to it. And as a student, I have given up so much just to come here. Is it the fault of you who are communicating with me that I don't receive it instantly? You understand? Mm-hmm. Or is it my fault that I am incapable of really listening to you?
Well, whichever it is, but suppose it's the difficulty is that I'm incapable of listening, then what can be done?
No, nothing can be done. You see, that's the difficulty. If I'm incapable of listening because I've got full of prejudices and opinions and judgments, defense, all the rest of it, but built up, and of course I won't listen to you then.
Well, let's say that it doesn't, here's somebody, let's say, comes along who has got through some of these defenses and so on, but see, perhaps there are others he's not aware of, There's something not quite so simple as that, right?
I think it is simple.
Well,
I feel it is dreadfully simple somehow. I think it is, if I could listen with all my being, with all my attention, it takes place. That's as simple as that, I think. You see, sir, you are telling me something and I'm absorbing it. And so there is an interval between your telling, my absorbing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And in that interval is the danger. If I couldn't if I didn't absorb, but absolutely listen to it with all my being, it's finished. Is it because in this there is no shadow of pleasure? You follow what I'm saying? You're not offering me any pleasure, any gratification. You are saying it is so, take it. But my mind is so involved in pleasure, it must be pleasurable to listen. You know what I mean? I won't listen to anything that is not completely satisfactory. I realize too the danger of that.
Danger.
Of being seeking satisfaction, pleasure, and all that. I say, all right, I won't. I see what I'm doing. So I put that aside too. No pleasure, no reward, no punishment in listening, but there's only pure observation. So we come back to that point. Is pure observation, which is actually listening, is that pure observation love? I think it is. Again
what?
You have stated it, and then my mind says, I'm fairly ordinary, I've come here. My mind immediately says, give it to me. Tell me what to do. You see, when I ask you, tell me what to do, I'm back in into the field of knowledge. It is so instantaneous. So I refuse to ask you what to do. Then where am I? You have told me perception without any motive direction, pure perception is love. And in that perception, love is intelligence. They're not three separate things, they're one thing. I have a feeling for it. I know because you have led me up very carefully, you have pointed out very carefully, step by step, and I've come to that point. I have a feeling for it. I'm sensitive enough by listening to all this to come to that point when I have a feeling. He says, by Jove, that is so. But it goes away so quickly. Then begins, how am I to get it back? Again, the remembrance of it, which is knowledge, blocks.
Well, what you're saying is that every time there's a communication, knowledge gets to work.
Very true, that's right.
And in many different forms.
So you see, it's enormously difficult to be free of knowledge.
Yes, it seems we could ask why doesn't knowledge wait until it's needed?
That's requires. That means psychologically be free of knowledge, but when occasion arises, you are acting from freedom, not from knowledge.
Not from knowledge, but knowledge comes in as information.
Yes.
It informs your action, but it's not the source.
Yeah.
And
That is, to put it rather succinctly, freedom from knowledge and being free, it is from freedom one communicates, not from knowledge. I wonder. Huh?
Yes.
That is, from emptiness, there is communication. One may use the word, which is, or language, which is the outcome of knowledge, but it is from that state of complete freedom.
Yes, and now knowledge, communication takes place, but it is concerning the question of knowledge, that is the irrelevance of knowledge, of psychological knowledge. So that is the communication.
Yes. Now, sir, can I communicate with you from freedom? So suppose I, as a human being, have come to that point where there is complete freedom from knowledge.
Yes.
And from that freedom, a communication using words takes place, right?
Yes.
Now, will you, as a scientist, a great scientific eminence and all the rest of it, will you, please I'm being polite, will you communicate with me? Can I communicate with you without any barrier? You follow, sir? You understand what I mean? I'm not trying to. Can I communicate with another? Or rather, let me put it there. Can that man who is free totally from knowledge, but uses knowledge as merely a means of communication, can I be in such a state of mind to receive that communication?
Yes, well, if knowledge is seen to be information, you see, to say that knowledge ordinarily seems more than information, it seems that knowledge itself is free. One does not ordinarily see that knowledge is not free, you see. That
knowledge is never free.
No, but it may seem at first sight that you are free to use your knowledge, you see.
Of course.
But it isn't free, and any activity of knowledge is part of the unfreedom. Now,
of course. I mean, if I want to understand myself, I must be free to look at myself.
Yes, and knowledge has pressures in it to prevent you from looking.
Knowledge prevents me from looking at it. That's so obvious. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it may be obvious at that stage, but I'm saying in general, people don't see that. I mean, but let's leave that aside.
If I'm full of opinions and judgments and evaluations, and to look at myself, I must be somewhat free from it to look. It's so clear.
Yes, but I mean, probably one tends generally to say there are certain kinds of knowledge which are harmful, like prejudice, and then you say there are other kinds which are not harmful, which are not prejudice.
The whole business.
The whole thing is all one structure. All one. It's impossible to have prejudice in one part without having it in the other.
How will you communicate with me who have come to a certain point when I'm really grasping, hoping, burning to receive what you're saying. So completely, it's finished. Am I, having come here, am I in that state really? Or am I fooling myself?
Well, that's the the question of knowledge is constantly deceiving itself.
Of course.
See, I think that I would say that knowledge, it's not even that I'm deceiving myself, but knowledge has a built-in tendency to deceive itself.
So, sir, is my mind always deceiving itself?
The tendency is constantly there when knowledge is operating psychologically.
So what shall I do? Come back to the same last
Well, you
question.
see, yes, we raised the question of deceiving oneself, and now, again, I think it's the same point, to listen to.
I mean, why don't we listen, sir? Why don't we immediately understand this thing? Immediately. What? We can give the reasons why, but that isn't old age, conditioning, laziness, 10 different. That's all.
Well, that's superficial.
They're all meaningless.
But would it be possible to give the deep reason for it? I mean,
knowledge will come back to the same thing.
Well,
you see, I think, is it that the knowledge which is the me?
Yes, that's the point.
The knowledge which is the me is so tremendously strong as an idea, not as a fact.
Yes, I understand that it's an idea. But the idea is, that's what I tried to say, that the idea has tremendous significance and meaning.
Of course.
For example, suppose you have the idea of God. This takes on a tremendous power.
That's like, I'm a British or French, it takes men, gives them great energy.
And also, it creates a state of the body which seems to be the very being of the self. Now, that the person doesn't experience it, as mere knowledge, but he first feels something very powerful, which doesn't seem to be knowledge.
Yes. Are we going round and round and round? It seems like it.
Well, I was wondering if one could, if there was anything that could be communicated about that overwhelming power that seems to come with knowledge and with the self.
Identification.
With identification. You see, that may be something that would be worth looking into.
What does the word, I've forgotten, the root meaning of identification?
Well, always the same.
It's always the same, that's right.
Yeah.
That's it, you see? It's always the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, well, that's the essence of the... See, if you say the self is always the same,
yes,
self, same self, it tries to be always the same in essence, if not in detail. And,
yes.
And I think this is the thing that goes wrong with knowledge, that knowledge attempts to be knowledge of what is always the same, you see, so it holds, you see.
Of course, it's always the same.
Yes, and knowledge itself tries to find what is permanent and perfect and always the same, right? I mean, even independent of any of us, you see. It's built into, like the cells,
From this arises a question. Is it possible to attain? I mean, I'm trying to use the word diligent.
Yeah, that's good.
Is it possible to diligently to attain? Diligence in sense be accurate,
Yeah, well, literally it means to take pains. That's
take
its root.
pains, of course. Take pain. Take the whole of it. So there must be some other way than all this intellectual business. We have exercised a great deal of intellectual capacity, and that intellectual capacity has led to the blank wall. I approach it from every direction. Eventually the wall is there, which is the me, with my knowledge, with my prejudice, all the rest of me. And the me then says, I must do something about it, which is still the me.
Yes, well,
We all know that.
well, the me wants to be always the same. At the same time, it tries to be a different.
Different, yes. Put on a different coat. It's always the same. So the mind, which is functioning with the me, is always the same mind. Good Lord, you see, so back again.
Yes, well, I see if we could be, see that always the same gives a tremendous force. And
Yes.
now, is it possible to, to leave go of that always the same,
Which is, yeah. See, we have tried everything. Fasting, every kind of thing to get rid of the me, with all its knowledge, with all its illusions and so on. And where one tries to identify with something else, which is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, a serious man has done all this and comes back to the fundamental question, what will make this wall totally disappear? I think so. It's the only possible when I can give my total attention to what you're saying. There is no other means to break down the wall. Not the intellect, not the emotions, not any of those things. When somebody who is beyond the wall, who has gone beyond, broken down the wall, says, listen, for God's sake, listen. Can I listen to you? When I listen to you, my mind is empty. So it's finished. You follow what I'm saying?
You see, I think generally one would feel, okay, it's finished, but something will happen and it's likely to come back. You see, is it finished?
I have no sense of hoping to come back, whether I'll have it in the future or the... It is empty, and therefore listen. It's finished. Better stop or come to a... It doesn't matter. 5 minutes is enough. So, for example, I'd like to go on differently. You're a scientist. To discover something new, you must have certain emptiness from which there is different perception.
Yes, but you see, I think that there's a difference in the sense that usually the question is limited, you see.
Yes.
And say the mind may be empty with regard to that question.
Particular question, yes.
And allowing for discovery and insight in that question, right?
But can that mind, which has been specialized and therefore inquiring into something, it becomes empty, and that emptiness, from that emptiness you discover something new. I understand that. But without any specialization, does this emptiness hold every other? I don't know.
Yes, well, I think that we have to ask that we are not questioning a particular area.
Yes,
but rather we are questioning the whole of knowledge.
Knowledge, yes.
And,
yes. See, the most extraordinary, isn't coming to it.
And that's, as you were saying, the end of knowledge, you see, as the Vedanta.
That's the real answer.
Mm-hmm. But if a person can take this scientific attitude and question the whole of knowledge, then...
Oh, of course.
Right. But generally, people would feel that I must keep knowledge in one area to be able to question it in another. You see, this is something that might worry people, to say, with what knowledge do I question my knowledge?
Yes, with what knowledge I question my knowledge.
But in a way we do have knowledge because we have seen that this whole structure, we have gone through it logically and rationally and seen that the whole structure makes no sense, that is, it's inconsistent and it has no meaning. The structure of psychological knowledge has no meaning. I mean, it has been done already, you see, in a way.
Right. So would you then, from there, from that emptiness, is there a ground or a source from which all things begin? Matter, human beings, their capacities, their idiocies, the whole movement starts from there.
Yes, well, we could consider that, certainly. Yes, and we certainly could consider it. You see that, but let's try to clarify it a little. You say we have the emptiness, right?
Yes. Emptiness in which there is no movement of thought.
Yes.
As knowledge, of course.
As knowledge, not as psychological knowledge.
Of course, I understand that.
All right, so, then...
And therefore no time.
No time, no psychological time.
Yeah, no psychological time.
Though we are
still of course. I mean,
but
we have gone beyond that. Don't go back to
No, but I mean, sometimes it...
Yeah, of course.
The words are often confusing. Yeah. They carry wrong meaning.
Psychological time. There is no psychological time, no movement of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And is that emptiness the beginning of all movement?
Well, would you say it's the emptiness is the ground then, or?
That's what I'm asking. Slowly, I'm going, let's go slowly into it. Is this, or should we postpone this for another day?
Well, perhaps it should be gone into more carefully. And
Carefully, right. We better stop.
Right. But I mean, before, just say one thing, that in California we were saying that there is the emptiness, and beyond that is the ground. You see, it's a question.
Yes, quite. I know. I don't want to answer into
We'll
that.
leave it go for the time.
I'll leave it. When do we meet again?
That's 2 days from now, on Saturday.
Day after tomorrow.
Yes.